Today's video is part one of an interview I did with Caleb Guilliams of Better Wealth. During this part of the interview, I reveal one of the foremost preoccupations on the minds of pre-retirees who are 50 and older, whether or not the rising tax naysayers are beginning to change their tune, the true national debt, and my response to the charge that cash value life insurance is a ripoff.
When it comes to your backstory, you didn't come out of the womb being like, I'm going to share with people about how they can retire in a 0% tax bracket. So where did that come? What is a little bit of your story from a standpoint of like who you are today and why you share this message?
It's sort of interesting. I got into the industry in 1997, which was an interesting year to get into the industry because Bill Clinton stood before the nation during the State of the Union. He says, "Hey, I got some great news. The national deficit is simply zero." So we went from having no national deficit, which is different than the debt. There was some debt, but basically he was saying, "Hey, look, we balanced the budget." And what the subtext of what he was saying was, there shouldn't be any more debt in the future. We're on stable financial footing. But here we are in 2022, and that's less than 25 years later, we're at $30 trillion of debt. And so, I got into the industry just right as like the calm before the storm. And by 2010, David Walker, who's a personal hero of mine, appeared on 60 Minutes and say, "Hey, look, I got some bad news. Tax rates have to double to keep our country solvent." So we went from, "Hey, things are awesome," in the course of about 12 years to, we are on this cataclysmic, crash course with, a debt apocalypse. And so right around 2010, I got acquainted with David Walker, former Comptroller General of the federal government. A lot of what his message was, look, because of unfunded obligations for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the predicted path of the national debt and what we'll have to earmark just for the interest on all of that national debt is simply unsustainable. And so we're on this course that doesn't really add up. And so around 2010, I started to really crisscross the country, raising the warning cry to people myself. I developed a presentation that involved three buckets: a taxable, tax-deferred, tax-free, which basically says, look, there's three basic types of accounts within which you can invest money for retirement. And the first two are pretty problematic in a rising tax rate environment. You got the taxable bucket, where every year you pay a tax. You've got tax deferred bucket where you don't pay the tax until the very end. But guess what? If tax rates down the road, like David Walker says, are likely to be dramatically higher than they are today, then it's not really smart to have the lion's share of your retirement savings locked up in the tax deferred bucket. And so I developed a presentation that talked about how to systematically reposition those dollars from taxable and tax deferred to tax free, so that by the time tax rates do inevitably rise, you've done all the heavy lifting. You can then take those dollars out tax-free. And so I built that presentation. I was asked by MDRT to present it at their worldwide annual meeting on two separate occasions. In 2014, I decided to write a book. And the book was simply the book version of that whiteboard presentation that I've developed over the previous years. And I sort of threw it out on Amazon and self-published it, crossed my fingers, hoped for the best. And, people started buying the book. They started reading the book, and it really sort of exceeded all of my wildest expectations. And that sort of put me on the map. And then in 2019, of course, we did the movie. And really one of my main motivations behind the movie, The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming, was to really convince the skeptic about the future of tax rates. The person that says, "Dave, I don't really believe you. I don't believe that tax rates in the future, even in the next 10 years, are likely to be dramatically higher than they are today." So what I wanted to do was crisscross the country and interview all of the most important experts in the nation on the national debt as it relates to the future of tax rate and say, "Hey, look, forget what I think. What do you guys think about the national debt as it relates to the future of tax rates?" And guess what? They're all reading the same music and they're all singing the same song. They're saying, if we don't change course as a country, that tax rates, within the next 10 years will have to grow up dramatically. Some of them even use the D word as it relates to the future of tax rates. Tax rates will have to double or we go broke as a country. So, I've wrote a couple of different books as follow-up to The Power of Zero. So that really is my story. And I've been in this industry for a long time, since 1997. Our goal is in the next 10 years to put 100,000 people on the road to the 0% tax bracket. So that's really our mission. That's what we talk about. And, I love what I do. So
I'm curious now, do you still have people that argue with you or say like, I don't see this happening? Because if you look at history, if you look at our national debt, isn't the unfunded liabilities 90 trillion and counting when you look at all the things that we're on the hook to pay, but we don't have the money for?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who you talk to. There's a very famous economist by the name of Dr. Larry Kotlikoff out of Boston University. He also takes up about 10 minutes in our documentary. Very, very compelling stuff. He's the foremost expert in the world on what we call fiscal gap accounting. What he does is he projects out over the next 75 years what we've promised to pay for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the national debt. He projects out over that same time period what we can actually afford to deliver under today's tax rates. And he says, look, if there's a difference between those two numbers, then your country has a fiscal gap, and that's its true national debt. So the true national debt's not actually 30 trillion or even 90 trillion. He says it's much closer. You ready for this, Caleb? He says it's closer to $239 trillion. What does that mean? That means we would have to have $239 trillion sitting in a bank account today, earning treasury rates to be able to deliver on everything that we've promised that we can't afford to pay. So the problem is much bigger and much more it's much more I guess poignant than what most experts are letting on when they're just looking at the $30 trillion of national debt. So yeah, it's a big problem.
It's interesting to me because the people that I've talked to, majority of them, I haven't found someone that's like, will argue with me that taxes are gonna to be lower. Even if you look at inflation, like inflation is a tax on everybody because you're like making the same amount of money from a buying power standpoint, but it's putting you in the higher rates. But that's not even saying about them raising taxes. And we have politicians that are like not even shy about it. They're like, this is what we want to do. And if they look at other countries, we're very much on the road there. Are people starting to come around, or do you still have people that are arguing against it? And do they have any validation of do they have any valid argument as it relates to why they believe that taxes?
Well, let me tell you a quick story to illustrate sort of what the wave is. So there's a financial guru out there who has historically been almost the diametrical opposition to what I believe. And his name is the White Coat Investor. He's actually, you've heard of him. He's an emergency room doc out of Salt Lake City who found that he had a penchant for financial planning. And so that's basically what he does full time now. And he read The Power of Zero, 5 years ago, and basically said, it is crazy that Dave McKnight is recommending that people systematically reposition dollars to tax-free. Roth conversions are of the devil. You should never do it, And I went back and forth with him. I said, look, if you look at the math, if you look at the fiscal trajectory of our country, tax rates have to go up by definition. They have to, or we go broke as a nation. Yeah. He says, we're just going to sort of inflate our way out of the problem. We'll go back to, 70s style inflation. Well, about a year ago on Twitter, this was right before Biden got elected. He says, look, if Joe Biden gets elected, based on what his tax plan is, he goes, I'm going to convert my entire IRA all in 1 year, which, by the way, is something I never recommend. And so I responded to his tweet by saying, look, I'm glad to see you're coming around. And so he blocked me. And so the point is, even my most, dire opponents are starting to come around into our camp and say, look, we recognize, we can see the handwriting on the wall. The math doesn't lie. Tax rates are going to have to rise dramatically. So rarely will people contest what I'm saying about the future of tax rates. Will we disagree on how to best insulate ourselves from the future of tax rates? Sure, but hardly anybody disagrees.
Yep. And mathematically, and let's take inflation out of it. So mathematically, if rates and thresholds stayed the same and we didn't have inflation, it wouldn't matter, right? Like from a standpoint of taking a Roth or deferring or postponing for the future. The moment that a threshold or a rate or inflation and increases the likelihood of tax, then you would be better paying tax on the seed, not on the harvest. And I think majority of people, even my I'll say very liberal friends that believe that taxes need to be increased, I think majority of people see that has to be it has to be the game across the board, regardless if you believe that or not. Like if you look at it from a country, It's a very powerful argument. And I think,
Yeah, this is a completely politically neutral proposition here. I remember I was giving this workshop in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Remind me, are you from Wisconsin?
I am from
Yeah.
Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just in Fond du Lac, and um, at the end of my workshop, it was 2 days before midterm elections, and people came up to me and they said, Dave, who should we vote for? Who should we vote for? And I never felt so politically powerful. And I said, you know what? It doesn't matter who you vote for, because whoever gets elected is going to inherit a math problem, the solution to which involves either doubling taxes, reducing spending by half, or some combination of the two. So really, it doesn't matter what your political persuasion are, because the math of our fiscal problems overrides everything. It overrides political partisanship. It overrides your political point of view. It overrides talking points. It is completely, politic neutral. And that's the thing about our message. It should appeal to both sides of the aisle. It should appeal to politicians on both sides of the aisle.
Yep. So I want to transfer into the next talking point, which is I think where a lot of people come at you is not the message that taxes are going to go up and we should be in a 0% tax bracket, but how you get there. You're a fan of Roth conversions. You're also a fan of life insurance. And I think that is like a trigger word, especially for our friend, the white coat investor and others. It's like the fact that you use life insurance means you're a horrible human being and that you're a scam artist. So let's talk about that, because again, you didn't come out of the womb saying, oh, life insurance is this amazing tool and we should convert into Roths. Why do you have this certain belief, and how do you teach where life insurance should be used and how someone should look at that asset?
Yeah, I don't look at life insurance as a silver bullet. I look at it as a complement to all of the other tax-free streams of income that are out there. I look at a strategy that contemplates multiple streams of tax-free income, none of which show up on the IRS's radar, but all of which contribute to you being in the 0% tax bracket. I want to take advantage of every nook and cranny in the IRS tax code. I think that if all you ever talk about is life insurance, you sort of look like a life insurance agent, and nobody hands their life savings over to a life insurance agent. So I think it's important to give everything their fair shake. I think every stream of tax-free income has something unique about it and some sort of value proposition. I love Roth conversions, for example, because if you had $1 billion in your IRA, you could shift every last dollar of it to your Roth IRA, no problem. So it could be a real workhorse in getting you to the 0% tax bracket. But the life insurance really does have some unique propositions. Number one, as you know, it's tax-free. The money accumulates tax-free. You can take the money out tax-free by a combination of withdrawing the basis and then loans. The money grows safely and productively. Whether it's whole life or index universal life, whatever flavor you prefer. We're not trying to hit the ball out of the park here. We're looking for 4 to 6% net of fees over the life of the program, which means that it works as a great bond portfolio. There was a guy, I just did a YouTube video on this. A guy appeared on Twitter and he says, look, life insurance is not an investment. And then Tom Hegna responds and says, it's not an investment. It's think of it as a bond alternative, then it works. And then Tom proceeded to say, look, I'm not an advisor. I don't make money off this stuff, but I pay $225,000 per year into my life insurance. And it is the best. Is it my stock portfolio? No, it's my bond portfolio. So we're not looking to make it the whole shooting match. It's just the bond portion of your portfolio. And you can get, as Tom says, reach into your portfolio, take out your bonds, replace it with permanent life insurance. You'll increase your return, you'll lower your risk, you'll lower your standard deviation on your entire portfolio, and you'll have a better outcome over time. And so that's really one of the main ways. It's a way to grow your money safely and productively. But the other way, and this is what I really love about it, is it's a death benefit that also doubles as long-term care. A lot of our clients are between 50 and 67. And if you're between 50 and 67, I can guarantee that if you're married, you have 4 of something. And I always like to ask those people, what is it that people have 4 of? And eventually we get around to the fact that they have 4 parents. And what is the likelihood that someone who's, say, 60 years old has one of those 4 parents that's going through a long-term care event even as they speak? And so a lot of people are saying, gosh, how do I solve this long-term care dilemma? It can wipe out my entire life savings. How do I do it without the heartburn associated with the traditional ways of mitigating long-term care risk, which is buying a long-term care policy? And one of the great things about permanent life insurance, particularly with the companies that allow you to receive your death benefit in advance of your death for the purpose of paying for long-term care, is if you die peaceful in your sleep 30 years from now, never having needed long-term care, guess what? Someone's still getting a death benefit, probably your kids or your grandkids. So there isn't that sensation of having paid for something you hope you never have to use. So is it a silver bullet? No. Is it a panacea? No, but it can be a very, very effective complement to all of the other streams of tax-free income that you're doing, particularly if it's structured and funded properly. If you need some help addressing any of the issues I discussed in this interview, head on over to davidmcknight.com and opt in for a complimentary strategy session. I'm happy to give you a hand. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video, and feel free to make comments or ask questions in the comments section below. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.